I think throughout life, I've probably had three friend groups in total. And for reference, I'm 28 years old. And yeah, I'd say I'd have about three good friend groups. I've had the friends outside those friend groups here and there, but they're usually they come and go. A lot of my friend groups, or I should say, of the three friend groups, they've lasted a long time. They definitely came and went in different times of my life. I would definitely say for my first friend group, obviously, I feel like everybody's first friend group, starts in elementary school. You're growing up, you're learning how to socialize, you're kind of getting into the rhythm of things. Um, and my my elementary school friend group probably, if I had to rank them, like if I had to put like a tier list or something, I would definitely say my first friend group was probably my favorite. Then again, I'm probably a little biased because obviously it's my first friend group. But like it it was a nice feeling, you know. I think in that friend group I had three, four or five people in it. We were very like tight knit. We were very close, we'd go to each other's houses, we'd hang out, we'd play on the Wii, play Super Smash, that kind of stuff. And it was definitely a nice, I don't know, for lack of a better word, it was a nice introduction into friend groups. I don't know if I'm making sense here when I say this, but it was my first friend group. It taught me a lot about myself, even as a kid. It gave me a lot of experiences. I dealt with a lot of unique things that obviously are new to children, and that friend group lasted me, I think, throughout until I got to middle school. And when I got to middle school, I think I was only friends, at least from the old friend group. I think I only had one friend in middle school that came from the elementary school friend group because you go from elementary school, or at least here in America, you go from elementary school, you go to middle school. There's a ton of different schools you could go to. And there was one friend in particular, he was actually my best friend. And it's so funny because when I got into the sixth grade, I remember seeing all these fresh new faces. I was like, I don't know any of these people. Like, and I don't know if it's just me, but you kind of like scan the room on like your first day of school and you're like, okay, who can I talk to? Who do I think I'd get along with? That kind of stuff. And it was funny because when I got to my second period class, um, the teacher brought in another student. They're like, yeah, this student's a little late, first day of school. And surprise, surprise, it was actually my best friend from my elementary school friend group. And I was ecstatic. I was like, oh my God, like, this is awesome. Like, I don't have to make new friends. Like, this is my best friend from elementary school. Like, I'm so hyped. Like, this is exciting. And it's so funny because there were other people in that class that we actually, him and I both became friends with. And that's kind of how I got into my second friend group. We all kind of did the same thing. We all hung out. We played Call of Duty, I think, at the time. I think Black Ops 1 was actually out at the time. And we'd all play that together on the Xbox 360. We all conveniently had an Xbox 360. It was funny because I remember there was this Asian kid that was in our friend group, and I think he was like the only one on PS3 at the time. So we couldn't really play with him, but it would be so funny because we would all like kind of trash talk on the PS3 because we were all 360 gamers, and I remember that very vividly. It was just so funny because in every friend group, there's always those roasting sessions and stuff like that. And looking back, looking back at it now, it's just kind of overwhelmed with a little bit of nostalgia because I never really gave it a thought. But we were all pretty tight. We were pretty close. Um, After the sixth grade, things change. You go on to the seventh grade. You go on to the eighth grade, and we kind of I'm not gonna say we all went our separate ways because we still did communicate, but we didn't communicate as much because all of us were making different friends. We were having different experiences, and as life goes on, people people move on. People go on to do different things. Um, Funny enough, now that I think about it, in the I think the eighth grade, that best friend I had from elementary school, we had some classes together, but it wasn't all of them. We were separated by some classes, and I never really realized it when I was in my early teens. But like my best friend, he was hanging out with a new person because he had more classes with him, and they kind of slowly became best friends. And looking back at it, I didn't really. I'm not gonna say I didn't know how to comprehend it. I was kind of just like, oh, that sucks. Like, I feel like replaced. And I'm not. I didn't really have. I didn't really have a best friend in the eighth grade at the time. Um, I'm trying to recall. Yeah, no, not really. Honestly, if I can't remember it, I probably didn't. Um, but I think that was like the first time in my life where I kind of experienced the the fact that people kind of move on, people kind of like people kind of drift apart and things like that. It kind of that's kind of just the way the world works, and it sucks. And I'll get in a little more into that later. But actually, no, I had four friend groups because now that I think about it, in middle school, yeah, when when our friend group kind of drifted apart, I did make other friends, and those guys, I actually, wow, I can't even believe I forgot about these guys, but these guys were my friends for at least 7 or 8 years. We were pretty damn close, like close to the point where like, if someone needed help or like someone needed money, we were there to like spot each other, that kind of stuff. And uh, when it comes, when it comes to friends, I'm very not judgmental, but I'm very particular about who I want to spend my time around or who I want to spend my time with. And there's a couple of things I look for in people, and it's not. I don't want to sound like I'm shallow or like prude or stuck up or anything like that. It's just that through living, I decided that I only want to be around people that want to be around people that make me feel like I can be myself. And I feel like that should be most people. But, there are a lot of people out there who want to go and they want to be friends with people who have no interest in them, or they want to fit in, that kind of thing. But I never really cared for fitting in much more than being around people who fit my personality, you know what I mean? Because if you can't be yourself with the people you choose to hang out with in your free time, what are you hanging out with these people for? You know. Now maybe there are certain situations, kind of like if you're at a job, like, you want to befriend certain people to maybe get a promotion, something like that, or some other thing, I'm not sure. Or nothing I can think off the top of my head. Um, there are situations. There are situations in where you kind of want to be friends with somebody that you don't really want to be friends with. So I get it. I get it. Definitely been there. But I think my final friend group, that was when I entered high school. I think this was probably my longest friend group. Friend group, I think of like 10 years or so, 10 or 11 years at this point. Um, this is probably this friend group here through high school and into early adulthood was probably the longest friendship I've ever had. Um, I couldn't say anything bad about him. Like all of us have been through things together. The normal friend stuff. We vented with each other. We talked about some serious things together, and a lot of the times, we joked together. We hung out, man. That's really the core of it. That's what friends do. You know. And recently, looking back at it now, a few years ago, when COVID hit, our friend group slowly started to break apart. And every time I got into a new friend group, I realized that I feel like I got lucky. every time I did make a new like every time I did make a new group of friends, because it just seemed like everybody just came at the most convenient time. There was never a period in my life where I didn't have a group of friends staying out with until recently. And by recently, I mean like 3-ish years ago, give or take. Like I said, around COVID time, we all kind of started drifting away. Even if, I mean, yeah, you've got online stuff to stay in contact, but people's lives are changing. And I feel like what they don't tell you about adulthood is that a lot of the people at least a lot of the people you know now, you may not be talking to them 3, 4, 5 years later. Um, and it was kind of a wake up call for me. And it sucks. And I don't know. I think I look back at it and I'm like, I always think, no, I'm always gonna be talking to these guys. And I think about it and it's funny because I look back and I think I thought that every single time in every friend group. I'm like, nah, we're probably gonna be in contact forever. But that's never really the case. And there is the rare case where you do have that one friend from childhood to, near the end of your life. And those people are extremely lucky. Those are friends that I think that you should absolutely keep around in your life because those people are keepers. That's a rarity. Um, Obviously, no one I knew from childhood I talk to now, but that would be really, really cool if that's how my life went. But it didn't, and it's fine. And recently, I personally had to accept that the people I know now, the people I did know, that eventually I won't talk to them much anymore. And it kind of hurt me. Not like in a bad way, but it kind of made me realize that life does move on. People move on. People's lives change. And you kind of realize that you're kind of thrown into this world without that knowledge that, one day that person that's your best friend could be a stranger to you someday. And I just find it so fascinating to think about how relationships just come and go, how people come and go out of your life. And at least with my most recent friend group, I remember I fought tooth and nail to try and keep these people around. And at one point, it's frustrating, especially when you're that person that's trying to keep things together. You try harder and harder and harder, and you kind of realize at some point, like, is it worth doing anymore? And that's kind of the position I was in. I was trying to keep a lot of these people around as best as I could, and I didn't I didn't look in the mirror and realize that like it's okay to let people go in and out of your life. That's the reality. You can't keep people around if they don't want to be around, you know what I mean? Like time just moves on, people move on, things change. That's really the reality of it. You can't change how people act. You can only choose how you react to those types of things. And it's bittersweet. And I always hated the one saying where it's like, oh, try and cherish the time you spend with people because you're not going to have them around forever. And if you said that to me when I was younger, I'd call you stupid. I'd be like, that's a horrible saying. That's dumb. But I guess as you get older, things start to make more sense. And looking back at it, I realize that now. And currently, I am at a point in my life where I'm not part of any friend groups. I mean, I've floated around here and there, but I've never really found my people that I kind of want to be around at this point in my life. I'm hoping in the future I do find that friend group again, but life as an adult, especially in this modern age, it is it can be it can be hard to make new friends. And with someone like me who's very particular with who he hangs out with, it's even more so. just as difficult. Um, one thing I did have to accept is that I have to be okay with being alone sometimes. And it is okay to be alone sometimes. Um, you have to be happy with being alone because if you rely on people for your own happiness, it's going to absolutely destroy you on the inside. And I was one of those people that tried to rely on other people to make me happy. And I kind of had to look back and I had to ask myself why I need this, why I need to rely on other people to bring me that joy. Is it because of something else? Is it because something with me? Is it because I don't like being alone? And it's not easy. And I don't think it's definitely not easy. Humans are social creatures, right? Like we like to be a part of something. We like to have somebody to talk to. Um, that's just human nature. And for me, like I said, I talk to a few people here and there, but it's not an everyday thing. I'm definitely on my own most days, and I've come to terms with it. I've come to terms with the fact that, I'm doing my own thing right now. Life is taking me in a different path, the same way it took my friends down a different path. And that's just the way things are at this point in time. Do I think it'll be forever? No, no, not at all. But all the time I'm spending in solitude, I'm learning a lot of new things about myself, things that I never really paid attention to when I was younger. And honestly, cutting out all the noise, it's, I want to say it's freeing. It's nice to be able to be alone and think about the things you want in life, the things you want to do in life. And being alone has taught me that. Now, obviously, I'm not advocating for like cut everybody out of your life, being alone, that kind of thing. That's not necessary. Um, if you have a supportive friend group or even one supportive friend, that's a pretty damn good thing to have, especially nowadays. Even if you only have one really good friend that you can rely on, one good friend is worth 10 decent acquaintances. And I can probably word that better, but I assume you understand what I mean when I say that. Um, one good friend will always triumph over, 10 okay people. You know what I mean? Because that one friend, that's the type of person you want in your life. That's someone that lifts you up, someone that calls you out, someone that wants what's best for you. I think that's one of the most important things. And it's always a quality over quantity kind of thing, you know, because you can have 100 friends, but how well do you know those friends compared to if you just have one good friend? Again, that's how I see it. Some people they thrive off of having multiple friends. They have multiple friends for different things. You have different friend groups for different things. That's amazing. I'm not knocking people that are able to have all of those connections. I think that's awesome. Honestly, I'm almost envious of that. But at least in my life in particular, I like to keep a select few close friends to me. That's really what's important. Again, at this time, I don't really have that. I kind of rely on myself for most things. And, some days they're definitely harder than others, but the reality is it is what it is, You can always change things in your life, if you really want that close friend, I feel like yeah, you can search for it. You can search for it as much as you want, but I'm a firm believer that it'll happen when it happens. And when I say that, I don't mean you just wait around and hope for somebody to drop out of the sky and you just hit it off extremely well. I say it when I say that, I mean like, do what you're doing normally, live your life the way you want to, but it never hurts to go out of your comfort zone sometimes to try and find that person, but it has to be right. It has to be natural. And you'll know it's natural when, you're just talking to the stranger and you kind of feel something. You feel that connection almost instantly. And you're like, huh, I actually kind of like this person. And that's usually how it starts. That's usually how the friendships develop. In adulthood, it's a little harder, especially if you don't really have hobbies that you know are like social, like that take place outside of like your home or like your bubble and stuff like that. It does get harder, but even then, there's online communities that you could be a part of if you care for that sort of thing, right? There are definitely communities for everyone, so it's something to think about. I'm not really the philosophical type, but it's funny because when I make these commentaries, like I don't read off a script or anything. I'm kind of just like thinking about what's in my head, and I'm hoping that like a lot of it makes sense when I talk about this kind of stuff because I don't really have a structure to these things. I kind of just like rambling in a microphone. So yeah, that's really the gist of it. But yeah, just some food for thought. Also, I apologize in advance for the quality. I use a noise suppression. Um, because I have a fan that runs in the background, and I really like having the fan on because it drowns out the noise, and having a fan on actually like helps me think. It sounds crazy, I know. If I find like a workaround for it, other than turning off the fan, then um, I'll probably do something about that. But I apologize for the audio. Anyway, with that all said, thanks for watching. And yes, I am still alive. I'm still gonna try and upload, but I'm pretty busy. I'm starting a new job soon, so life's been hectic, to say the least. But I'm hoping you enjoy, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.